This feels like everybody showed up to work late and stoned.
It's on a day. It feels
This
like
is
everybody
like when
showed
you
up
have to work on
late.
Saturday and you agree to
Yes,
do it.
that's what I was just about to say. Erickson. It's like, but we were all supposed to be off. We showed up late and stoned, but it was supposed to be a
I'm
day
gonna
off.
show up,
That's
but I'm not
exactly how
doing
it
any
feels.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the mill on Saturday. That's what I did at the mill. Is I'd have beers. I'd go on. I'd do the Monday through Friday on the green chain, and then when I would come in on Saturday, I got to watch the green chain. I'd watch other people who weren't good at it. Like, not that I was good at it, but I was better than the Saturday crew. And then I found this area that was a part of the mill that was deserted, and there was porn. And then I started bringing beers on Saturday, and then I would go out and on the sun. I called it the sun deck, but I would make an appearance, like a meet and greet with everybody, and then I would try to be visible every couple hours. but visible while visible, like I would see the foreman on one end of the mill, and then he would see me, and then I would just slowly disappear. And then that would be.
Weren't you working on like a fucking assembly line?
Well, I was on Monday through Friday. It was one of the components that was vital to it.
Yeah.
And then on Saturday they just figured, well, shit, they should have just not hired. My job was unnecessary.
But what was your job on Saturday that it wasn't crucial that you were making sure like something didn't pass by?
I guess they wanted me to go. I mean, I had to wear a hard hat, and then they would send you underneath the mill to
these rules.
They'd send you underneath the mill to shovel, which I wasn't into.
Is that where you built your porn fort?
That's where I gathered some components from that stash and took it to the sun deck eventually. But I would go down underneath, and then it's like your head was, my head anyway, I can't speak for other people's heads, but my head would always find a pole or a post or a fucking,
a beam, like they call it when it goes
beam or some fucking beam, and it would hack my hat off, and that would piss me off. And then like at some point I was like, and this sawdust is coming down here whether I'm shoveling it or not,
At a mill. At a mill,
underneath.
Sawdust is raining down on you.
Yeah, and that was the thing, is to keep this area cleared out. But fuck that, So I would.
I like that Andy bitched that he had to wear a hard hat, and then went on to tell us that he hit his head repeatedly.
But
I'm glad you had a hard hat.
I would have rather hit my head once with just the fucking meat. I would rather hit my head one time.
They didn't even make people wear hard hats until Andy started working down there. Like, fuck, this guy's just banging his head on everything. Give him a hard hat.
The poles were just, my head is this high, and then the hat was this high. So that's where all them poles were. So it would like bam, and then it would knock it out. That's what would jerk my head back, and I would fling that hat and go, motherfucker. And then I started writing protest on it. And that's when Hoot Looney didn't care for that. He wasn't there on Saturdays, but he'd see my fuck this, shit
were doing
or whatever.
Like Norma Ray type slogans on your.
I think the movie
your hard hat,
Platoon,
right, Andy?
the Platoon movie must have been out because they had like baby killer or whatever on their helmets, and I wrote like wood killer or shit. But Hoot didn't like that at all, and he asked me to scrub that stuff off of there. Which I did because I didn't want to lose my cushy job underneath the mill. But yeah, so the point is you can have fun at work.
Andy, what happened up until you were unceremoniously let go? Did the porn fort stay? Was it in operation?
That was it. So I got hired at this mill. It was in Coquille, right by my house, and I worked at that all as 5 summers, something like that. Every time I went to community college, I spent the summer at the mill. So 5 or 6
so
years.
9 summers.
yeah, something like that. So I'd have to wear the hard hat all summer, but I got that gig back every summer. And then when I got asked not to attend college anymore by by a committee, a group of people that got together to discuss whether I should stay in college or not. And I kind of was with them on that I shouldn't. And then I went to work in this. I came back and I worked in this other mill, and that's the one where I got fired and was yeah, that's the one where the guy told me that every time I missed a piece of wood, it was like if I worked at a grocery store, with taking down a box of cereal and stepping on it. I didn't know he was smoking meth on the job till later.
Well, no wonder he was so alert.
Right, but I just thought that was fucking, I mean, I didn't want to be there. I didn't have any respect for myself, and therefore I had no respect for them or whatever in my situation. But and I knew there was just like, man, fuck this shit, the cereal.
Also,
I would have been
let's just recap it a little bit. What exactly was your job on the green chain? You've described it before. Like your job was to pull out the boards that weren't
fishes
sawable.
Yeah,
some shit
basically,
like
I'm
explain
with
that all.
I'm with the wood when it realizes it's being killed. The logs it's cut
so you have
down
to walk the lambs to the slaughter.
Yeah, but I was, the green chain's where all the action was, because that's where the logs come in all hot and the steam and shit, and then they drop down and spin, and then they just like shear them down to like little.
Don't they debark them?
Yeah,
they debark off. Yeah, and then that the guy, one of my favorite guys to fuck with was the cutter guy, and he was just up the machine somewhere, would start cutting, and he was like a little fucking dipshit. This guy, he'd always wear he wore fucking like little pants, like okay, they were like cutoffs sort of, but they were a little longer than cutoffs, and they would hang way down, like just little tiny
culottes.
Kind of like fucking culottes,
like
and then he had a bunch
shorts, or like with the fringe where you cut them all off.
Like the lumberjack version of
lumberjack.
Reno 911.
Right.
Yeah, I'm picturing a real life Big Jim guy here.
Yeah, he was like he was a little Jim because he was a little fucking dude, but he had these little pants on, and then he'd always have like fucking a bunch of quarters, always jingling all this change, and then he'd come into the break room. And like, well, there's a change machine in there. So I think what he was hoping is someday there would be the change machine would be broken, and he'd be in there and go, I got this. And I could never figure out why the fucking guy felt like he needed to carry around at least $6 or $7 in quarters all the fucking time.
Maybe he just wanted to make sure you knew he was coming.
And then he would say, are you the boss's kid, or they just hire you? Some stupid, he'd have one of them, you working hard or hardly working when you'd come into the break room. Like a quip. And then he would jingle that change. It's like, maybe that's how he got off. I don't know. It was like, he was a weird fucker, but I like that, when things would get fucking jammed up there, I would walk up all casual on him when I really should have been saying, whoa, shut this thing down.
So, all right. Okay, so that gets back to it. What was your job? Like you say you were on the green chain, but what was your task? What did they say your job was?
And then it would get cut into. This is how people can do mill work and still be ignorant, because I don't know what the fuck. But they would cut these big sheets, the big like a 48-inch sheet. That would be ideal. When the wood's running good, they cut that out of the middle of the log or whatever, and it cuts these big sheets, and those go overhead all nice. And then when you get into some choppier parts of the log, they cut littler things to get rid of that. Like little like coke lines, chop a little line here. And then there's like little shitty wood, it's called, or the fishtails, and that's where one end of the log is fucked up, but you can still salvage it. But they're a bitch to pull off of the chain because they're not full piece, and they'll snag on the belts when you pull them off. So you got to like grab this shit and fling them basically, and then turn around. It's like it's really kind of.
And that was your job.
That's what I did in the summers, and then when I got hired at this other place, it's kind of the skilled. One of the skilled jobs at a mill, and not skilled, and you have to be smart. You just have to be kind of a hustler, which I got good enough on it so that I could fuck the system up. And now I feel bad about it. Now I'm on the side of nature. I wasn't doing it to hurt nature. I was doing it because I just didn't fucking see it. I didn't see it.
You found out you worked at a dolphin farm.
Yeah, I made slippers.
Andy, you weren't cutting down like old growth forests. I mean, these are like areas that they planted and they're harvesting, man.
And then eventually the joke was, because when you miss wood and then it falls, it goes, so it goes through about sometimes 3 or 4 people. So, you're pulling 24s, there's like, you got like 4 carts you're filling, and then, if you're up front, you let the fishtails go because there's, it's like, fuck this, I'm not doing these, and it's let somebody else. So you kind of pick and choose if you get to be up front. At GP, I never was. There were like these fucking lifers there. And these guys would go there for fun. When they weren't working at the mill, they would go up to a motel in Eugene that used to have porn that just pumped in, and they would bring their VCRs up there and tape movies. So
wait, they're taping porn like we used to tape songs off the radio?
Yeah, they get mixtapes.
Yeah, they would tape.
Well, we know who started the porn fort.
Yeah.
They bring their cameras in to look at the TV at the Stag Film and film right off of it.
Yeah, and those guys, at GP in those days, the front 2 guys on the chain were like.
You keep saying GP. Is that Georgia Pacific?
Yeah, Georgia Pacific. I probably shouldn't mention it because they may come after me for lost wood.
Good thing I highlighted it.
But yeah, like the front 2 guys, those guys were like, even though, what they did off the court was their business going up. But they were like athletes, they were fucking, and when those guys were good up front, you didn't have to do much, like if you were 3rd or 4th on the chain and you had 2,
So they're the first. So all of you guys are pulling off the boards that are coming through that are going to fuck up the chain or the belts that pull the logs through to be cut, right? Like if they're all fucked up, you're pulling them off of there and throwing them into a waste pile. I'm still trying to understand exactly what it is that's happening.
So the smaller stuff comes down, cut, and you grab that off and pull it off. So then you're clearing the chain almost. And there's little bitty shit or some fishtails. They go down to the next guy or the next. And then on the end, if you're on the end, which I like to be on the end because then I didn't, and if it was coming down fast, you'd still get a lot of stuff. But, fuck it. I just let it go a lot of times, because it wasn't necessarily my wood and I was being paid an hourly wage and I was part of a union.
So your job, you were pulling off wood.
Yeah.
It's basically what your job consisted of.
And eventually, like when I really learned how to fuck the system, I kind of valued myself as making chips. Because, they still, because then when the wood goes down the conveyor, then it grinds up into wood chips.
Oh,
it was more valuable as the 24-inch piece, which I ignored and let fall down the hole and then get ground up.
That's the money shot, right? That's the most expensive one?
Yeah, well, the 48's above, but so I would sometimes that 48 stacker would go down, and when that would get sideways, that's when everybody would get, everybody would feel bad, especially if it was
that's
one
when Hooney got a call even on a Saturday.
Well, who wasn't a very
come down.
Who liked to go around and fucking glad hand and just chat and shit. So he wasn't a very good foreman. He was, he was all fucking hanging out over there and shit would be going. But it was like the responsibility of the people down there on the chain to go, whoa, But I didn't do that. When I saw one of those going, I would go, all right, it's like if I worked at Home Depot and there was somebody walking towards me with a question about something, and then I just act like I don't see them and walk away. That's the equivalent of what I would
all the time.
Yeah, that's the guy I get.
Yeah, shit gets sideways up there or whatever. That's when I would go, oh fuck, and nobody was looking, and I would turn and go, ooh, let's see, and then you just hear it grinding up and everything fucking up. And great time.
Andy, that's the worst thing you can do to a tree that you kill.
Those assembly line type jobs. I worked in a mine we had a mill that would produce copper rod, and like those jobs are fairly monotonous and boring until something goes fucking wrong, and there's a fuck up on one part, and then it's everybody's job to get over there and fix something. You know, everybody has something to do in that situation. Andy, I picture taking a shit after it fucks up. Like, I'm going to take a shit. I'm not helping these fucking assholes.
Yeah, if I could walk the other direction, but I would always go like, you know, I'd make a big spectacle of it when it was stacking up and nobody saw it. And then I would, you know, I knew right before, like a foreman's walking down and getting ready to turn a corner and he's going to see it. And then I would run down and be the hero, run down from a couple slots away and go, whoa, hey, Tony, don't you see this shit? Yeah, I like to fuck over Tony. He may still. I almost feel safe talking about people that were dumb because I figure they're dead by now, being from Coquille and that dumb or whatever. But he was he'd come over and tell me how to do my thing. You know, like he'd give me pointers or whatever, and like fuck you, Tony, you're on the end over there too. And then so, you know, like so there was two separate belts going. So he was over here, I was over there, and I would see his thing get fucked up and I would just like fucking let it go. It wasn't my responsibility, and Tony wouldn't pay attention either. So it would get real. I don't even know how that guy continued to work there.
You had two lines running simultaneously?
Yeah, so there's a space in the middle, and then the jitneys would zip in and out, and those guys were the
who?
I had the jitney drivers would come in and then they would grab they would put a fork underneath the cart and yank it out, like just like, you know, you're pulling into a cart and then all of a sudden the cart's gone. And those guys were, you know, those guys would fucking, they had no, I mean, the mill I worked at last, I know quite a few people were smoking meth on a regular, and that would explain almost all of it. But there was some really fucking bad, you know, they would try to smash you with the cart if you fucking didn't do what they wanted. If your load was unstable, you know, and then they would pull the cart out. And so, like, you know, you're supposed to stack it in there neat, and it's not always easy to get a neat load in a cart under, you know, the conditions. It's fast and shit. So these guys,
everything's timed. You're going because you need so many board feet per hour, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, you fill a cart, they zip it out, they take it in, because the whole mill, you know, it's like everybody's waiting for their cut, you know. From there, it goes down to the dryers, and then they put it in through there. The dryers is where you could lose your mind. I did that job a little bit, and that's where you just feed it into this thing, and it's like you got like 3 or minute or whatever. You watch a clock, and then you race against yourself. It takes about 8 seconds to do it, really. There you go. You go, all right, I'll do it every 30. But that's all you do all day is you just go shove pieces of wood ahead. That's a whole job.
Kiln?
Yeah, it goes into the kiln, and then somewhere along the line it goes.
Well, it is murder trying to get details out of you on this story, man.
Yeah, well, I only fed. I mean, see, that's the mill. You don't. Yeah, it goes into something, warms it up. But all I did was feed it into the thing and didn't think about it. And I never worked. I walked through the glue line. I never worked in the glue line. That was another position.
What, Erickson?
He throws up, I think.
I worked some jobs in construction when I was the same age, and I was also of absolutely no use to the overall project that we were doing.
Yeah.
So I understand this, but to me, to think about the guys at the mill thinking about how the job would go if Andy was there, how the job would go if Andy wasn't there. And it's like a Homer Simpson sort of situation. It's like, wow, every time Andy doesn't show up, you know,
the
perfect safety record.
Safety's up.
I don't know if I was
just running around creating havoc.
We've always had like it was one guy that you're like, how is everything run smoother with one less guy when he's here? Fewer. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I could also do this is you'd put metal into the you know, when the wood falls and goes, if there's metal detected up the thing, it shuts it down on that end.
Immediately,
yeah. So that was always
E-stop, emergency stop.
Mm-hmm. And that was
that's what like the tree spikers do, right?
Uh-huh. And that would be something that would, like, they'd pull, you go, all right, you go get, so somebody could go clear it and it would take you off of the line. So sometimes I would arrange for myself to be like, oh shit, there's metal up there. And then I would go and go, I wonder if it's in that leather glove. I'd make it easy to find, because I would want to find it immediately so I could just slough off,
you don't have to actually work.
It would take about 15 minutes. It'd take about 15 minutes to find, or 15 to 20, but I would find it in the first minute, get my glove back on, and then just hold on to the metal. And then when the foreman would come, I would have the thing all clear and go, shit, here it is. I was like a good cop.
No, you weren't. You're the cop that threw a fucking shiv down, dude.
Right. But
I love that Andy doesn't think that they got suspicious, and every time he had a jam, it would take like 15 minutes, and he'd always convene. Oh, there it is, right? It was always him.
Exactly, 15.
But
he always finds it at 14:30.
Well, the problem is there was, like, my main foreman was Hoot, and he would leave his section all the time, and I would leave my, so it was like I worked well with Hoot for 3 summers, and then he wouldn't have me back a fourth after I started writing protest on my helmet. So I went to I just found another.
You made it 4 seasons, Andy.
I think I made it 5.
4 punishing summers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like but
that's manageable.
Somebody with a little bit of experience is always preferable to hire back than hire a fucking brand new guy and have to train. I think.
And I think it just kind of was part of their like an outreach to the community. Everybody's parents, and then you just fall out of high school and then go into the mill, and maybe it'll take.
Even though Andy was responsible for. Even though Andy was responsible for 25% of the lost productivity, it was always better to hire him back.
Well, they didn't.
Maybe not, though. Maybe what did they tell you the job was? Because maybe it was just a deal where they're like, hey, it might be community outreach, like you say.
It was like the same
just
as
give
band.
Andy a job. Like, what's the job? Just I don't know.
Well,
have him stand down by under the thing.
Here's one thing that was fun about that job too, is the guy who worked in the personnel office who hired everybody for the summer, one-armed bandit. I never did inquire, but I assumed it was he got his position in that office by being inattentive on the glue line or something. He didn't ask about it, and he didn't tell.
So he was your human resources advocate and also a cautionary tale at the same time.
Yeah. You couldn't help but watch him open a cabinet and pull out people. You think a guy with one arm can just open a cabinet and pull out a file and pull something out of that? Nah. It ain't that smooth. But he hired me, and I would have shook his hand if he wasn't carrying that hand. I think that was an awkward thing because he had a lefty. So you go, and he hired you, so it's always like good firm handshake. Oh fuck. I don't know.
He's one of those guys that just doesn't want any help with his handicap. You keep trying to help him, but he doesn't want any help. But he's not left-handed, so he's terrible at everything he does with his left hand. So it keeps dropping shit, and you're like, I can do it. Come on.
I think he was right-handed originally, and I know because one time at the mill, and this is why I stopped getting involved with things. Is one time I tried to correct something in the machinery, and it grabbed my hand and pulled I had a glove on, but I thought my fingers were coming off, and these are 2 fingers, you don't want to lose.